Under a late autumn sun, a young gorilla explores her world while her silverback father stands guard nearby. A gibbon swings gracefully through the treetops, while an orangutan climbs at a leisurely pace, living up to his name, Old Man of the Forest. A group of ring-tailed lemurs gather together for a grooming session, and a female drill searches the ground for food. The World of Primates is the newest and most ambitious exhibit here at the Philadelphia Zoo. Covering over 1 acre, it is home to our closest living relatives in the animal kingdom. This type of natural exhibit is new in zoo design, however. When the Philadelphia Zoo first opened in 1874, it was designed more for the primate Homo sapien than for any other animal. Early exhibits placed the visitor in a superior position by putting most of the animals behind bars or in pits. This arrangement was hardly ideal for the animals, but at the time, it was considered proper. In the 20th century, we have come to realize that animals require space and exercise to remain healthy. The homes for the animals need to be as much like their native habitats as possible to keep them alert and active, and modern zoos everywhere are now creating exhibits that display the animals more naturally. This new philosophy encourages more normal behavior in the animal, and also assists in breeding programs. Exhibits like the World of Primates, African Plains, and Bear Country are examples of the new zoo that is evolving across the country. As part of this evolution, the World of Primates was created to replace the antiquated ape and monkey house, which had been built in 1896. Construction for the new exhibit began in 1984, and 2 years later, it was ready for its new residents. First, however, came the complicated task of moving the primates in. In order to move the primates from their old exhibit, it was necessary to anesthetize them. This process provided the veterinary staff with a rare opportunity to do a complete medical exam on each animal. Using a blowgun, Dr. Keith Hinshaw, our head veterinarian, delivered anesthesia to each primate. Dr. Hinshaw explains.
The animals were anesthetized with a drug called ketamine, which causes them to become unconscious, but they will still make small movements. They'll swallow and blink their eyes, but they really have no recollection of what happens to them during their anesthesia, and it's usually a fairly smooth recovery after about 30 minutes.
During the move, each gorilla, drill, and orangutan, seen here, were carefully placed in a cargo net to be carried to the Penrose laboratory. The cargo net helped to evenly distribute the weight, which is important when carrying animals that weigh up to 450 pounds. The net also allowed the staff to turn corners that would have been difficult to negotiate with a rigid stretcher. The zoo avoids sedating animals unless it's absolutely necessary. The veterinary staff seizes any opportunity to run tests, since they may not get another chance for a long time. Young gorillas like Chaka and Anaka were only mildly sedated. Roseanne Giambro, a primate keeper, tenderly held each youngster until its mother's exam was completed. Smaller primates, like the white-handed gibbons, were harder to anesthetize since they move very quickly. They were restrained in a net and carried back to the lab so the staff could ensure a proper injection. Until they were fully sedated, they were still very unpredictable and had to be handled with heavy gloves. Once in the hospital, the vet staff began to examine the primates. The anesthesia would last only for a short time, so speed and efficiency were most important. In the time available, blood samples were taken, teeth were examined, and temperatures and weights recorded. Each animal was given a vaccination and tested for tuberculosis, a dangerous disease among primates.
Small amount of tuberculin was injected into the eyelid and the skin of the chest, And we would test the eyelid in particular because if there was any swelling at the test site, you could observe it on the animal without having to restrain it. You could just look at the animal in the cage and see that the eyelid was swollen.
This examination helped the vet staff pick up any undetected health problems. This data also provided normal test results for future reference. Since the zoo's primates can't tell us when their teeth hurt, our volunteer dentist, Dr. Carl Tinkelman, was on hand.
He was present during the entire primate move operation. He cleaned animals' teeth. He also extracted a couple teeth from one of our gorillas that needed to come out and found some dental problems in one of the drills that required more extensive root canal therapy later on.
One of the many tests run on the primates was an electrocardiogram, which measures the electrical activity of the heart.
Taking the electrocardiogram simply involved clipping small electrodes onto the animal, running the machine to record the data, and then labeling the paper strip. And although we did not expect to find any problems in the animals, we wanted to have a record that could be kept in their file.
Body measurements and hand and footprints were also obtained. The prints are used by the Education Department to illustrate the size of various primates. Once the tests, vaccinations, and measurements were completed, each animal was transferred to the World of Primates, where a staff person closely watched it until the medication had completely worn off and it awoke from the anesthesia. Over the next several months, the primates slowly adjusted to the lush new exhibit. Not only did they now have more space, but they also found themselves surrounded by many other strange animals. Located near the center of the zoo, the World of Primates has both indoor and outdoor facilities for the primates. General Curator Carl Kranz explains the layout of the exhibit.
The outdoor exhibits in the World of Primates consists of 4 islands. We have an island for the gorillas, one for the orangutans and gibbons. The drills have their own island, and our group of ringtail lemurs also have their own island. They spend most of their day outside, and during the spring, summer, and fall, and each evening we bring the animals in so that we can make sure that everyone's okay, there aren't any injuries or illness in the group. And they spend each evening indoors. The gorillas have 3 different rooms to choose from. They have 1 large one and 2 smaller ones to move between. The floor of the cage is often covered with hay, and we have balls and tires and ropes and other items in the cages, and that just helps keep the animals entertained while they have to stay indoors. All the indoor exhibits in the World of Primates are all designed in the same fashion. We're standing inside of the gorilla building in the World of Primates, and all around me is the tunnel system that we use to interconnect the various indoor enclosures with each other and to connect with the outdoor exhibit, which is just behind me through this door. When we come in each morning, the first thing we do is we check the gorillas to make sure that everybody's okay, and we do that by looking through this window here. We just want to make sure that no animal has any cuts or scratches or bruises or anything like that. Once we're satisfied that they're okay, we can let them out into the tunnel system, through this gate here. As you can see, it's padlocked so that they can only be opened when we want it to be opened. And I just lift this gate and I can pull the door open. Now once the animal is in the tunnel system, I can move it to any of the rooms, or if I desire, I can move it to the outside enclosure. And the way I do that is I have the animal come up here and on this overhead portion of the tunnel, come across and come down onto this side here. And again, the door is padlocked. But I can open the door and let the animal outdoors.
Because the environment of the zoo eliminates the inherent dangers of the wild, poachers, habitat destruction, and territorial fights, for example, health problems that would usually be fatal can be treated here. For instance, just after Bung the orangutan was moved in, it was discovered that he had diabetes. He would not live long in the wild, but here he can receive insulin like any diabetic. To ensure his health, however, it was necessary to move him back to the rare animal house. This left the orangutan exhibit in the World of Primates without an orangutan. After a long search, a 15-year-old male Bornean orangutan named Bim arrived from the Phoenix Zoo. Like any other primate that arrives here, Bim was immediately put into quarantine for 90 days and watched closely. This allows the zoo staff to prevent any diseases or viruses from being passed on to the other primates. While in quarantine, Bim was given a television to keep him company, and keepers frequently stopped by to visit him. After the quarantine period was over, he was moved to the World of Primates, where he would eventually share the exhibit with our family of gibbons. However, until he was fully adjusted to his new surroundings, the gibbons were kept inside, and Bim had the island all to himself. Much to everyone's surprise, leaving the building and going out onto the island was more difficult for Bim than had been expected. Curious but cautious, he was hesitant to venture past his doorstep. Unfortunately, when he finally began to explore the outside world, the first thing he touched was the electric wire that surrounds the island. This wire is charged with a low-level electric current and is designed to keep the animals away from the edge of the island. The jolt from the shocker wire will scare him, but it's not enough to hurt him. Finding the outside world a little shocking, Bim decided that there were better ways to test the ground. Using pieces of cardboard and even his water pen, he made sure the earth in his backyard was safe. Bim was born in captivity, and as far as we know, had never touched grass before. After a week of sitting in his doorway, Bim took his first steps out, but still refused to venture far from his door. To coax him out, the keepers placed fruit farther out onto the island. Bim did his best to drag the fruit back to where he felt most comfortable. Well, try again, Bim. Orangutans spend a great deal of their time eating. In the wild, one can spend a whole day feeding on fruit. Bim was quite creative in his attempts to hide from the curious public, but even a bad case of orangutan shyness can fade. He crawled out of his box one day and took a good look at his home. The gorilla family and the drills that occupy the island to either side of him got their first good look at their new neighbor. The next big hurdle was introducing Bim to the family of gibbons that would share his island. This was touch and go for a while, but after a brief confrontation and a staring contest, Bim was accepted by the gibbons. While Bim was settling in, the search for a mate continued, and in the summer of 1988, a female Bornean orangutan named Rita arrived from the San Francisco Zoo. She was moved into the World of Primates after her quarantine. Vet technician Eileen Mahan worked closely with Rita.
Rita's trip from San Francisco, I think, went very well. Her keeper from San Francisco came with her, and that made it easier for her because there was someone here that she knew. The keeper and I spent a lot of time together. talking about Rita, her likes and dislikes, and what she wanted. And so we got to know her. I got to know her fairly well. She is the most intelligent animal that I've ever worked with. She imitates everything that you do. She seems to have a very large vocabulary. She adapts very easily to any situation. Even though she's here to breed with Bim, we don't know when that's going to happen. Sometimes it takes a very long time for the bind to take place and for them to be able to produce babies. But we're on the right track. We have them here together in a good atmosphere with a good diet. So. Rita is a junk food junkie. Her favorite normal things that she gets in her diet are her bananas and grapes. They get fed a variety of fruits and vegetables along with zoo cake. But if she had her choice, she would get cookies and ice cream and soda. But they're only for special treats when she's being medicated.
The Philadelphia Zoo has been a pioneer in the field of animal nutrition. Despite an occasional treat, the staple of the primates' diet is zoo cake, a grain mixture developed here at the zoo. Apples, grapes, and oranges are a favorite delicacy, and some primates also receive tree branches to eat. Gorillas and orangutans strip the tender bark off with their teeth. In the wild, primates spend most of the time foraging for food. So to duplicate these conditions, the keepers spread fruit and vegetables around the outside. Forcing the primates to search for food keeps them alert and active. Of all the primates, the ones most surrounded by myth and legend are the gorillas. Mysterious and elusive in the wild, they were described by early explorers as ferocious, man-like beasts. As recently as 50 years ago, when there were only 11 gorillas in captivity, movies and circuses continued to portray them as vicious killers. Only in the past 40 years has research revealed the true gentle nature of the gorilla. Gorilla expert George Schaller observed that gorillas are eminently gentle and amiable creatures. Peaceful coexistence is their way of life. In the world of primates, our gorillas live in a troop, much as they would in the wild. Our current troop was started in 1969 with the acquisition of Snickers, a female who was about 2 years old. The following year, another female, named Samantha, and a male, John, were brought in together, both approximately 3 years old. As John grew, he developed into a silverback, the term for a mature male derived from the silvery gray hairs on his back. As such, John is the leader of the troop. As an assistant curator of mammals, Dave Wood has spent time working around our gorillas.
John, the adult male silverback, his role is the breeding male, and he is also the absolute ruler of the harem that he develops with the females. There at times may be arguments to John's decisions, but his decision is final. Also, John's role and function not only as decision maker, but as absolute protector of the group. If any threat should come to the group, it's the breeding male, the silverback, that will do a bluff charge at first to ward off any invaders to their territory, and would actually attack if warranted. Jessica, the first surviving offspring of our trio founder stock, was born in 1980, born to John and Samantha. Jessica needs to be moved out of the family unit at this point in time because she is sexually mature and is starting to cycle regularly. This does cause tension in the group, with John, her father, being the only breeding male. We attempted to find some younger animals to set Jessica up in a breeding program of her own. By luck, the San Diego Zoo is doing some major renovations with their gorilla habitat there. And we were lucky enough to be offered a middle-aged pair, Memba and Alvila, for at least 2 years. Hopefully Jessica can be separated from the group, integrated with this pair of animals, and she could actually breed with this male. Chaka, who was born to also John and Samantha, was born in 1984. Anaka, who was born to John and Snickers in 1985, was much more outgoing animal than Chaka was. Chaka was more of a mommy's boy, and it wasn't until his younger brother came, then all of a sudden Chaka had a brother to play with opposed to a big sister. He soon developed getting in trouble as little boys do, he and his little brother. Cola, who was the last born as of this date, was born December 1988, a little female, and she was born to Samantha and John. All our gorillas and their progeny all belong to the Species Survival Plan, which is offshoot of the ISIS, which is International Species Inventory System. This is so zoos can coordinate breeding efforts and keep the gorillas genetically diverse as possible, and make sure no inbreeding occurs, and keep medical records and histories of all the animals within worldwide captive collections. At present count, there are near 300 animals within the North American ISIS plan and almost 600 within international captive holding programs, which puts half of the captive stock on the North Americans' responsibility.
This responsibility of breeding endangered animals in captivity is vitally important to the survival of many species. Some primates, like marmosets, gibbons, and gorillas, have been most prolific in their new exhibits. Others, like Bim and Rita, will take more time, but there's no doubt in our minds that we will be successful. The World of Primates has proven itself to be a model of how good the zoo can be. In a recent poll, visitors named the monkey exhibit as their favorite in the zoo. The primates appear comfortable and are breeding successfully. And now that the primates are properly housed, the zoo can concentrate on another sorely needed exhibit. Our carnivores now reside in the last vestiges of the old zoo, living in small enclosures surrounded by metal bars. We are currently raising funds for a new carnivore exhibit that will provide our otters, snow leopards, red pandas, and jaguars with open spaces like those in the World of Primates. Zoo design and our understanding of animal behavior will continue to change rapidly in the coming years. Zoos are the last remaining hope for many endangered species, so it remains our greatest challenge to keep pace with these changes. 10 years ago, the ape and monkey house was the zoo's most antiquated exhibit, and gorilla babies like this one had very little to look forward to as they grew. Today, Cola, her siblings, and her fellow primates have a much brighter future ahead of them in the World of Primates.